guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be reviewing the first book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and book 1 is The Lightning Thief. Yeah, let's get first off with the summary, the spoiler-free summary. Percy Jackson is a pretty normal kid. The only thing weird about him is that he manages to get expelled out of every single school he goes to. He's also ADHD and dyslexic. He's just your ordinary kid, pretty much. But everything changes when one day he's on a school field trip with his friend Grover. And so basically on this school trip, one thing happens after another. Percy pushes one of his classmates into a fountain, or supposedly. He gets in trouble with his algebra teacher, Mrs. Dodds, but the strangest thing happens is that when Mrs. Dodds takes him aside to confront him and stuff, she turns into this weird monster with long talons and wings, and she has yellow fangs too, so Percy is extremely creeped out, as any normal person would be. But the next strange thing that happens is that his Latin teacher, Mr. Brunner, comes wheeling through the door because he is crippled and he has to be in a wheelchair, and throws Percy this ballpoint pen, which turns into a sword, and Percy defeats said monster. But what's even stranger than all of that is that when Percy gets back to the rest of his class, apparently Mrs. Dodds doesn't exist. When he asks them about Mrs. Dodds, they're like, who's that? There is no Mrs. Dodds. And so Percy is extremely weirded out by this. And Percy almost believes them all and maybe thinks that he's gone crazy until he hears Grover, his friend, say otherwise. From here on out, things only get crazier and crazier. Percy's mom finds out what happens and sends Percy to this camp, the summer camp called Camp Half-Blood, which apparently is a camp for demigods like Percy, which have one god and one mortal for a parent. While at camp, Percy figures out that his godly parent is Poseidon, the god of the sea. But that fact alone has strange and dangerous repercussions. Will Percy survive his first summer at Camp Half-Blood? And what does being a demigod even mean for him? You'll have to find out. Yep, that was a pretty short and sweet summary. You kind of have to keep it that way without spoiling anything. But yeah, let's head on to the super spoiler summary now, where I give everything, and I mean everything, away in detail. So yeah, people who still want non-spoilers, please go to the description and click the timestamp. That'll take you to the moral section, which has no spoilers, so yeah, go click on it now. Anyways, back to the super spoiler summary. So, where did we leave off? Yes, Percy is in Camp Half-Blood and finds out that his dad is Poseidon. He also figures out that his Latin teacher, Mr. Brunner, is actually a centaur. And that means he's half horse and half man. So the top half of his body is like a regular man's, and the bottom half of his body is a horse's. So the wheelchair is like a disguise for him to hide his horse legs in, while it looked like he had real human life, but they were fake human legs. Anyways, let's not go too much into that. So basically, Percy's at Camp Half-Blood, finds out that his dad is Poseidon, and so apparently, if you're a half-blood or a demigod, then in the real world, monsters will they sense you and they're gonna come to hunt you down. Only if you're a son of a powerful god. If you're a son of only if you're the kid of a powerful god. If you're the kid of a not so powerful god, then you can get away with living in the mortal world for the rest of the year. But some people, those who are the kids of more powerful gods, have to live in Camp Half-Blood for the entire year, because Camp Half-Blood is protected by a special tree which doesn't let any monsters get through the barrier around the camp. But basically the reason why Percy is actually in danger is because he's the son of Poseidon, and apparently Poseidon is one of the three most powerful gods, which is apparently Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. So they're the most powerful, but they swore a really, 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 really solemn oath to not have any more kids. But, of course, apparently now Poseidon broke the law. Yeah, and now Percy has to deal with everybody kind of outcasting him because he's the son of one of the big three, apparently. So, and now apparently Percy is given a quest, and the reason for his quest is that apparently one of Zeus's most prized possessions has been stolen, a lightning bolt. And the description in the book says, I'm talking about a 2-foot-long cylinder of high-grade celestial bronze capped on both ends with god-level explosives. So yeah, that's the lightning bolt for you. And Zeus thinks that Percy stole it, which is kind of strange because Percy has never been to Olympus in his life, which is, you know, where the big gods usually live most of the time. And he would have to go there to have stolen the lightning bolt, because Zeus thinks that Poseidon somehow convinced Percy to steal the bolt, which is also strange because Percy has never met Poseidon in his entire life. So yeah. So now apparently Percy visits this oracle, which is funny. I actually learned about this in history class recently. The Greeks have this thing called the Oracle of Delphi, which apparently was a psychic spirit that could predict the future. So it's a ritual for everybody at Camp Half-Blood to go see the oracle before they go on their quest. And so Percy has to do that, of course. He goes to the oracle, and the oracle tells him to go west and a bunch of other morbid stuff. So Percy's going west, and apparently that's where the entrance to the underworld is, because the entrance to the underworld is always in the west, but this time it's in Los Angeles. Percy and Grover are headed to Los Angeles. So he says goodbye to his new friends, which include Luke, the counselor from the Hermes cabin, and Annabeth, the daughter of Athena. Wait, yeah, it's Athena, which Percy may or may not have a crush on, but we'll get to that later. Anyways, so Percy and Grover headed to Los Angeles. So Chiron gives Percy a sword, which is called, what's it called? Anaklusmos. I probably butchered the pronunciation, but it's Anaklus-mos. Anaklusmos. That's what I think. So after a long and harrowing trip on which they encounter a lot of mythical monsters, and even the famed Medusa, which we're not going to get into because you don't have time for that, they also encounter Ares, the god of war, which also happens to be the dad of the meanest girl in Camp Half-Blood, Clarice. Good thing Clarice is not on the trip with Annabeth and Grover and Percy. And they get a little sidetracked in the Lotus Casino, which apparently is a weird trap with which he thinks you haven't been there for a long time, but you've actually been there for a long time, and they just suck you in with like all these games and entertainment. They offer like free stays, like they give you free cash to use in their arcade and stuff like that. So Annabeth, Grover, and Percy get sucked in for 5 days, and when they finally snap out of it and realize that, oh no, they like have to get out of there before they stay there forever, they only have 1 day left to complete their quest. So anyways, eventually they manage to get to the underworld, and after evading the monster guardians of the underworld, and so they meet the god Hades, and he's not happy once they start talking to him because they think Hades has stolen Zeus's lightning bolt, so obviously they want to get it back. But Hades denies having stolen the lightning bolt and actually reveals that his magical item, his Helm of Darkness, is also missing, and he thinks they've taken it. So now it's getting kind of messy. And so actually once they get out of the underworld narrowly, they actually meet Ares and find out that Ares has taken the Helm of Darkness, because he wants to start a war among the gods. He also took Zeus's lightning bolt, so he has both of them right now. Percy and Ares battle out. Percy makes a deal with Ares that if he wins the battle, then Ares gives him the bolt and the helm, and they can go away in peace. If Ares wins, then he gets to turn Percy into anything he wants. Not surprisingly, Percy wins and gets the helm and the bolt from Ares. But he's also made an enemy of Ares, because Ares says when he leaves Percy, he says this, and I quote, "You have made an enemy, godling. You have sealed your fate. Every time you raise your blade in battle, every time you hope for success, you will feel my curse. beware, Perseus Jackson, beware. So yeah, that's what he says to Percy. So anyways, Percy returns the lightning bolt and the helm to their respective owners, but he also tells Zeus that Kronos, which is apparently the Titan and the father of the big three gods, is starting to rise, because the gods cut Kronos into 1,000 pieces and put him in Tartarus, which is like a pit in the underworld, and Percy saw that while he was there. So he tells the gods this, but they're like, oh no, discussion is closed. So Percy's like, you know what, I'm gonna go home, guys. So he goes to his mom, and his mom actually was married to another guy, but he is like a horrible guy. Like, he drinks, he only cares about playing poker and driving his fancy car, and so Percy tells his mom, when they're in private at least, he's like, Mom, I can end this, because he has Medusa's chopped off head, which, yes, sounds very creepy, but the legend around Medusa was that she could turn people to stone by looking at them. So he's like to his mom, if my stepdad takes one look inside this box, he's gone. And so he decided to let his mom make the choice and left the Medusa head with her and went back to Camp Half-Blood with Annabeth and Grover. So Percy returns to Camp Half-Blood, and he and his friend Luke, the council of the Hermes cabin, go down to the woods just, to hang out together and practice their sword fighting drills. But Percy figures out that Luke is actually the one who betrays Percy in the prophecy, and he's already done it. He's like, he was the one who stole the lightning bolt and the helm originally, but lost them to Ares, of course. And Percy figures out that Luke is actually serving Kronos, the Titan, and this is dangerous stuff, because Kronos is like super powerful, like more powerful than Zeus and Poseidon powerful. But Luke disappears, and he is a magic scorpion that bites Percy, and Percy basically faints. And yeah, the book kind of ends on that ominous note, and Percy leaves Camp Half-Blood to go back home with his mom for... Okay, that was the end of the spoiler summary. Let's head on to morals. So first step is worldviews. So Rick Riordan is not a Christian author, for sure. Just definitely, if you do some research into the rest of his books to... Yeah, no, he's not a Christian author. Of course, the worldview here is that everybody has to obey the gods whom they serve, and if you don't, then you get punished. Like, you have to be careful what you say around them and stuff like that. There's also appearances of a few mythical monsters and stuff. Although I definitely would say that Percy is, like, the book is told from Percy's point of view, but I'll definitely say that Percy is definitely not the best rule follower there is. So there is no other prominent worldview in here, no mentions of any other religions. So let's head on to foul language. There were no bad words here, some minor rudeness. Yeah, that's all I can think of, no bad words for sure. Okay, moving on to violence. So there was definitely violence, but it wasn't like overly bloody or gory. There's definitely a lot of like high-paced action sequences, including injuring and beheading people with weapons, for the sake of being non-spoilery. I'll just keep it at that. Moving on to romance. So there's nothing inappropriate here in terms of romance. I will note though that there are like a couple mentions. Okay, because if you're a demigod, then your parent is one god and one mortal, so somehow that had to happen. And unfortunately, some of the gods are like unfaithful to their partners, like their other godly partners. And yeah, so we'll just leave it at that. Of course, it's implied throughout the book, but there are no scenes of that. So yeah, let's move on now. On to alcohol. So this is just like a super minor mention. The god of wine, or Dionysus, I think it's Dionysus, Dionyscus, yeah, Dionysus. He makes a couple appearances throughout the book, and he's the god of wine, so he's grumpy when he isn't, like, drinking and stuff like that. So a couple scenes when, like, it shows him drinking wine, but like, yeah, that's it. I thought I would just minorly mention that. So yeah, that's it for the morals. Let's move on to my rating recommended age level. So I'm gonna rate this book 4 stars. I enjoyed it. The story was pretty good. The plot kept me engaged throughout the book, and it was really interesting to read from Percy's point of view, because, you know, he's ADHD and dyslexic, and I haven't read any other books from points of view with characters that's ever from those. So that was really interesting, and I actually learned a lot about Greek mythology in here. As for my recommended age level, this is kind of tricky here. Okay, I'm gonna say 11 to 12 for like the writing level. Writing wise, it's not complicated at all to understand. That's why I think 11 to 12-year-olds would be easily able to understand the writing in this book. But as for like the morals and just worldviews and stuff like that, I would recommend more of a 12 to 13 plus age, just because I feel like you need to have a solid foundation grounded in biblical worldview before you can go and read worldviews like these on Greek mythology and these Greek gods, because, you know, if you read them at too young of an age, then they just like sink into your brain, and you might start thinking that's even reality, and it could like subtly influence the way you think. Anyways, that's what I believe, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Those are my personal ratings, and so I would definitely recommend you to be 12 or 13 before you read this for maturity reasons. But yeah, again, parents, leave it to your discretion. People my age, I leave it to your discretion as well. So that about wraps up my review of The Lightning Thief. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a good book with a few minor flaws, but yes, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the rest of the series too a lot. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and it gave you a little bit more of a insight into what exactly goes on in Percy Jackson, because I know my dad was definitely hesitant about me reading this in the first place, but he let me read it, so thanks, Dad. Anyways, that's it. I don't have anything more to say, so I'll see you guys next week for my special vlog of this weekend and kind of parts of next week, yeah, because my dance recital is tomorrow. So excited for that, and my graduation celebrations are next week, so also excited for those. I'm going to be vlogging them and putting them in a video for you guys to see, so I hope you guys will enjoy seeing what my everyday life looks like. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Bye!
I was